think the easiest way to teach you how to reduce anxiety and stress is to show you how I might work with the client in my private practice. So meet Jimmy. Say hi, Jimmy. Hi, I'm Jimmy. I would love to know how to reduce stress and anxiety. Jimmy's going to tell you a little bit about what's going on with his anxiety and stress, and I'll show you how I might work with him. I'll share one of the approaches I take as a therapist to help someone shift their response to anxiety, not by trying to eliminate it, but by teaching them how to be in a different relationship with it. And that involves noticing it, labeling it, and experimenting with different ways of engaging with anxiety and worry. So if we haven't met before, my name is Oliver, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Los Angeles. And I love helping people with anxiety, teaching them tools that can reduce stress and stop overthinking and worrying. So Jimmy, tell us a little bit about what's going on. Well, I've always thought of myself as someone who can handle stress, right? I just thought anxiety was something that other people had, you know, those people on TikTok who walk around with paper bags and breathe into them every time they're stressed. But it turns out I'm actually one of those people who needs a paper bag. I've literally tried everything to push it away. I tell myself to snap out of it or just pull myself together, but my anxiety keeps creeping back in. It starts early, like I wake up, even before I open my eyes, my mind is racing, right? A constant tape playing of all the things I've got to do, all the things I can't forget. I'm worrying about work projects that are due later that day. I'm worrying about work projects that are due in 3 weeks. It's ridiculous. Most mornings I'm just lying there thinking about all the things, not doing anything, and I'm utterly frozen, and I haven't even got out of bed yet. It doesn't just happen when I wake up, though. I'll be driving to work and suddenly a thought like, ooh, what if I get fired pops into my head, and then I start stressing out about that. And then I'm scrolling through the internet at a red light on my phone looking for new jobs, convinced I'm going to get fired. And then I'm calling my partner to tell them that they have to sell the car. And then when I do get to work, it's super hard to concentrate because I'm so distracted by all of my worries that I can't figure out where to start or what to do. I'm so busy thinking about all of the things that I've got to do and stressed about getting fired that I'm missing all of the work that actually needs to happen. You know, and perhaps the quiet moments at the end of the day are the worst. Like lying in bed, my mind races again, and then I don't sleep. So when I do wake up, I'm not only ruined from not sleeping, but I'm still anxious, thinking about all of the things that I didn't do and should do and have to do and worried about getting fired. It doesn't stop. That's great. Thank you, Jimmy. That gives me a really good picture of what's going on for you. Thank you. The first thing I noticed was that Jimmy said he's tried to fight his anxiety and push it away. I have tried everything, and I tell myself to snap out of it. I tell myself to pull it together, but it just keeps on creeping back in. Generally, I find that when you try and fight anxiety or push it away, you're actually reinforcing it. So tip number 1 is what you resist tends to persist. Anxiety's job is to scan the horizon for potential threats. It provided an evolutionary advantage at some point to get worried about those hungry-looking dinosaurs who might attack the village. Dismissing the threat of the hungry-looking dinosaurs doesn't compute with your anxiety, who's frantically trying to get your attention about those sharp teeth and hungry looks those dinosaurs are giving you. So dismissing anxiety actually makes it come back louder and stronger and bigger because you haven't soothed it. You haven't assured the anxiety that everything's okay. So the goal is not to eliminate anxiety, it's more to change how you respond to it. And ultimately, what we need to do is help the brain understand that it's not a threat, or to take action so that we're assuring anxiety that we're dealing with the threat in an appropriate way. So instead of fueling anxiety with resistance, acceptance actually weakens its grip on us and removes our emotional investment in its presence. So I might explain that to Jimmy, and I say something like, anxiety is like a rip current in the ocean. Those are like those sudden tidal forces that pull you away from the shore and out to sea. Your instinct is to panic and swim harder towards the beach, but that's exactly what is going to tire you out and leads to you drowning. So instead of seeing anxiety as an enemy to fight, what if we saw anxiety as part of your brain that is trying to be helpful? It's relaying some information or a signal, and if we can perhaps view it as information, we might be able to master it more effectively than if we treat it as a threat or an enemy that you've got to banish. The problem is anxiety thrives on resistance. The harder you push it away, the stronger it comes back. So we've got to talk to anxiety in a different way. And at the moment, Jimmy is covering his head, pretending it's not there. It's like when you were a little kid and you thought there was a monster under your bed. You could hide under the covers and pretend it's not there and hope that you fall asleep. Or you could lie awake imagining how awful the monster is, how big it is, how many teeth it's got. Or you could turn on the lights and look under the bed. The first two options aren't setting you up for a nightmare-free night in future evenings. But it's only when you learn to be brave and look under the bed are you going to assure yourself that there's no monster there. And when you do that, you can probably fall asleep. So the next thing I want to help Jimmy with is to do with his anxious thoughts. It doesn't just happen when I wake up, though. I'll be driving to work and then suddenly a thought pops into my head like, what if I get fired? And then I'm suddenly scrolling through my phone at a red light looking for new jobs and calling my partner telling them that they have to sell the car. Tip number 2, not every song on the radio needs a sing-along. Let's think about anxious thoughts that enter our brain as being in different categories. Back in the day, when old people like me used to listen to the radio, it was super exciting when your favorite song came on. You would immediately reach for the volume and crank it up like, yeah, this is my jam. I don't think people say that anymore, do they? God. But then depending on the DJ, the following song would inevitably be lame and you'd turn the volume down. Anxiety makes you believe that every song that comes on the radio is your favorite song. It's your anthem. You have to get up and dance. You have to turn the volume up. And the fact is, it's not true. Anxious thoughts come into our head all of the time. Like, did I turn the oven off? Or don't forget to pay rent? Or is that asteroid really going to hit Earth in 2032? Some of these anxious thoughts can be legitimate. Yes, for sure. You need to go and check to make sure you turn the oven off. Or, yeah, you should probably pay rent. Other thoughts are just not so urgent. Like, if it's the middle of the month, you might not have to worry about paying rent for another couple of weeks. And that asteroid is about 7 years away from collision. So it doesn't require too much of your mental energy today. Here's how it is, Jimmy. The human brain throws thoughts up at us all the time. It's just what our brains do. They throw thoughts up. For someone with anxiety, their brain is like a kid with their first phone. Every alert gets their attention. Every buzz feels important. But the reality is that not every alert deserves action. Some pings are a priority. Others, it turns out, are just one of those annoying promotional text messages. Sometimes those pings require a response. Others you can read and delete, and others you don't even have to open. The problem is, anxiety is tricking you into believing that you have to reply, read, and respond to all of the messages. Your anxiety has convinced you that every single ping is a priority and you need to jump on it and reply to it, even that one that just came in from H&M or whatever online brand has gotten hold of your cell phone number, and it's like you're immediately taking action on that 10% promotion that ends at midnight. Do you actually need anything from H&M? Those are promotion text messages, and promotion texts are just annoying or distracting. Your brain sends you a lot of promotional text messages, and in reality, they're just background noises. They're worries about situations that are totally out of your control or too distant to act upon right now. They both trick us because they feel urgent and real, but often there's nothing immediate you can or need to do about them right now. The problem is, though, if you treat promotional thoughts in the same way as priority thoughts, your brain stays in a constant state of alert, and that is exhausting. What we've got to get you in the habit of doing is deciding how you respond by deciding what category it goes in. Is it a priority or a promotion? Is it a hit song that you turn up or background music that you ignore? So how does that idea resonate with you, Jimmy? And do you think you're going to be able to distinguish between priority and promotional thoughts? Tip number 3 is, are you stewing or doing? When anxious thoughts come into our head, it often feels totally overwhelming because we get really deeply engaged with those thoughts. We become the thoughts. We get immersed in the fantasy, lost in the picture. We're actually in the movie rather than in the audience watching the movie. So we do need to cultivate some mindfulness here, which I know is everyone with anxiety's most hated word. But mindfulness is essential though, because it teaches us to create space between ourselves and our thoughts, right? It helps us take a step back and be the observer of the thoughts rather than being in the thoughts. I'm worrying about work projects that are due that day. I'm worrying about work projects that are due in 3 weeks from now. It's ridiculous. I'm just lying there thinking about all of the things and not doing anything. I'm utterly frozen and I haven't even got out of bed yet. Jimmy, I think you're telling me that when anxiety strikes, it can feel totally overwhelming because you're deeply engaging with those anxious thoughts. So you're lying in bed thinking about getting fired, but it's a total fantasy, right? It's a story that you're making up. Nobody's actually fired you and nobody in the office has called you to tell you that you're in trouble. What you're doing, Jimmy, is you're stewing in your thoughts. And when you're stewing in your thoughts, you're not actually doing. The stewing in your thoughts is like listening to mental gossip. Full drama, sordid details, without a shred of truth to it. It's full-on XOXO gossip girl. If you can start to observe that you're stewing in some thinking, it's going to help you snap out of it, and then you can get into actually doing something to alleviate that fear or anxiety driving it. You can start to do this by remembering your catchphrase. You're welcome to use "am I stewing or doing?" Other people say this is just a thought. Someone else says this is not my jam. Whatever you want. But can we decide now on what your little catchphrase is going to be? Number 4 is that all you've got? The idea of asking a client with anxiety to sit quietly and start meditating will not go down well. Because if you've ever had anxiety, you will know that sitting still is exactly when anxiety rushes in and takes over and gives you all of the drama, worst case scenarios, and gossip. Your brain interprets quiet as an open invitation to actually amplify your worries. So some people with anxiety have a really great strategy of just keeping busy all the time, right? They just keep themselves going and going and going, and it's a way to avoid sitting still and having those anxious thoughts come rushing in. But what happens at night or when those thoughts sneak in randomly throughout the day? When you're really going there with anxiety and you're in the movie instead of watching the movie, it can help to start becoming the director. And you can do that by challenging anxiety and saying, is that all you've got? Or is that the best you can do? We're leaning into the worst case scenario and saying, what else have you got? So some of the language I use with my clients is deliberately exaggerated to point out the absurdity of these fantasies. So if a client is worried about getting fired, I'll say, yep, that's a possibility, sure. And have you decided what bridge you're going to live under when you're homeless? And sure, that asteroid could hit the Earth, yep, but what happens if the zombie apocalypse happens at the same time? When we purposefully engage with those fears, which are already irrational, and then exaggerate them, you kind of realize how ridiculous they are. And it totally disarms your anxiety. It's a paradoxical mental exercise because it demonstrates to your mind and body that the anxious thought that anxiety is blaring at you isn't actually a threat. And when I do get to work, it's super hard to concentrate because I'm so distracted by my worries that I can't figure out where to start or what to do. I'm so stressed out about getting fired that I'm actually missing the things that I need to do. Okay, Jimmy, I've got a bit of a weird one here for you. When these anxious thoughts start coming in, what I want you to do is welcome them. We already know that ignoring those thoughts or hiding from them only makes it come back stronger. So we have to face it head on. I not only want you to welcome your anxious fear-based thoughts, but in a really messed up way, I want you to provoke it. And the way that we can do that is by saying, try harder. Like you're really saying to anxiety, is that all you've got? When you're deliberately and playfully challenging anxiety, it's like you're calling its bluff. And essentially, you're flipping the script. You become the director of the movie, not the actor. More importantly, you're not resisting anxiety anymore. You're inviting it in. And when you invite it in, exaggerate it and provoke it, you've got the power, not anxiety. Number 5 is all about redirecting. People with anxiety will hate this one, but we have to learn to notice when we're stewing, not doing, and then deliberately redirect our attention to something meaningful in the present moment. We have to remember our zones of control. What we don't want to have happen is to allow worry to become a habit. And for most people, worry is already a habit. So the thing about habits is that they are super efficient patterns of circuitry in your brain that flow without any effort. They've become implicit. So when you brush your teeth, it's a habit. You don't have to learn or think about it, you just do it. Same with riding a bike. You don't have to remember how to do it. It's a habit. These are super useful because we don't have to relearn anything. It would just be exhausting if we constantly had to learn things that were habitual. Because you focused on learning a bike and you got taught how to brush your teeth, it's now an automatic, efficient circuit in your brain that just switches on. Worry can be another habit that is horribly efficient when you practice it too long over time. So we've got to help break the worry or anxiety habit. And a lot of people with anxiety will tell me, well, that's easier said than done. And I don't disagree, but we do have the power to change our thoughts. And at the same time, habits are hard to break. If you imagine right here is a green dragon, imagine what it looks like, okay? Green dragon over my shoulder. Now, I want you to stop thinking about the green dragon here and think about a purple frog right here. Purple, froggy, you got it? Great. You were thinking about a green dragon, and then you stopped thinking about a green dragon, and now you're thinking about a purple frog. I rest my case. You can change your thoughts. Now, of course, it's not that easy, but there's something to that example that points out that you can change your thoughts. Now, obviously, you have to be aware that you're thinking the thoughts and that you don't like them, and then you have to remember you can change your thoughts. But we do have the power to do this. Sometimes it starts with just acknowledging that you're in the anxiety loop and you say, thank you, or literally say anything to redirect your thoughts. And then perhaps the quiet moments at the end of the day are the worst, like lying in bed, my mind races, and then I don't sleep for hours. And when I do wake up, I'm utterly ruined from not having slept, and I'm still anxious and my mind is still racing. Jimmy, my concern here is that your brain has associated lying down in bed with the idea that it is now time to worry. So whenever you lie down in your bed and turn the lights off, your brain is now signaled that it's time to worry. So we have to get really smart about breaking this habit. And first of all, I think what we should do is try and write down all of the things that you're worried about, all of the thoughts that anxiety is going to throw at you as soon as you lie down. Let's get ahead of it. Let's write it down. And then we're signaling to our brain that you've got this and you've already thought about it. And anxiety really doesn't have to throw these thoughts up at you anymore because you've already remembered it. This is going to take practice over several nights to break. And in the meantime, if you lie down and you notice yourself getting into worrying, we've got to break that pattern. So what I want you to do is go lie on the sofa or move your pillow from one end of the bed to the other. Anything to shift things that's going on in your body will shift your thoughts. It's going to be helpful there because at the moment there are physical cues lying down that are linked to that mental process. So it's a trigger for worry that we have to interrupt. So those were 5 ways to help you learn how to reduce anxiety and stress. But these techniques for managing anxiety are most effective when you really deeply understand the rationale behind them. So practicing a technique like breathing is great, but without grasping what's actually going on behind it, it kind of limits its effectiveness and makes it feel artificial, or perhaps there's just no real buy-in. So the brain responds best when it recognizes the logic and thinking behind it. So hopefully I'm sharing with you some psychoeducation here. It's really important because you or a client will comprehend why you're doing it, why you're redirecting your thoughts, or why you're getting out of bed. When you internalize these strategies, they sort of land on a deeper, more intuitive level that really helps sort of transform them from being techniques or coping skills to more integrated self-soothing mechanisms, which are going to be much more effective in the long term. So I'll often say something like, hey, I don't want you to use these techniques simply because I told you to, or because, you think you should. I really want you to understand why you're using them and make them your own. So I'll be checking in with Jimmy over the next few weeks and the next few sessions to make sure he's really integrating them, making them his own, and not feeling like he has to do them because I told him to. All right, if that was helpful, please hit subscribe, like, or share. Leave me a comment below. I'm happy to answer your questions, and I'll see you next time.